Can I just thank Imogen and all of the partners at Ward Hadaway for kindly offering to host us this evening in what can only be described as a phenomenal setting, given this beautiful backdrop behind me. So thank you, Imogen, and to Ward Hadaway. And can I thank each and every one of our guests this evening who have chose to not be in the sunshine, who've gave up their Wednesday evening to join us. I should say Thursday evening, in fact. Pay attention, pay attention. That was the first check, just to make sure we're all listening. Giving up your Thursday evening to join us here for what will be, I hope, an inspiring, thought-provoking, educational evening, having the opportunity to listen to, learn from, and perhaps benefit from some of the insights, experiences of our four very experienced entrepreneurs. I know many of you in the room, but for those who have not had the chance to introduce myself to this evening, my name is Carl Swansbury. I'm partner and head of corporate finance at RG, which is one of the largest independent full-service advisory firms in the region. And as a consequence, I and my partners have the pleasure of supporting entrepreneurs as they start up, scale up, and look to build businesses of material value, so that at certain points that value can be taken off the table to create financial independence. And 6-7 years ago, it dawned on me that the one thing that differentiates good to great is entrepreneurs who have a network of entrepreneurs around them, whether it be as former mentors, as individuals to provide insights, so that they can benefit from the hindsights of others who've been there, done that, got the T-shirt. And therefore, I thought, well, we needed to create an environment where entrepreneurs could listen to and learn from others. Hence my Confessions of an Entrepreneur podcast, which is all about giving entrepreneurs the chance, if they don't have their own network, to listen to other entrepreneurs, to understand that setting up a business is tough, sacrifices we all have to make, to understand the difference between private equity and perhaps bringing in debt as you scale your business, to understand that actually no business goes in a straight line. And as a consequence, last year we were thrilled to bring the podcast into this live environment for the first time. So we're more delighted than ever to be hosting our Confessions of an Entrepreneur live event for the second time this evening. In terms of timings and format, so we're started 15 minutes behind, but don't worry, by design. So as a consequence, we are going to have now 1 hour of discussion between me and our four esteemed panelists, where we are going to get right under the skin of these individuals and hopefully find out some things that you didn't even know yourself about yourself. We'll then do Q&A. I'm going to give you guys 15 minutes to ask any question of these four panelists, and they must answer those questions honestly and in a very, very direct way. We'll then wrap up. The bar is stocked, and I'm sure anyone who's ordered a glass of white wine has learnt that lesson early. We are drinking buckets of wine here this evening, but that's a good thing. So please, we'll be having wine, drinks, canapes, and networking at the end. So stay for as long or as little as you like. But for now, let me just start by introducing, in a bit more detail, our four esteemed panelists. So our first panelist this evening is Heather Mills, who is a Northeast born and bred entrepreneur, who in her early teens was homeless, and as a consequence, without doubt, wasn't destined for greatness, perhaps is what many people could have thought. Despite that, Heather has gone on to start up, scale up, and indeed create material value in a multitude of businesses, including V-Bytes and No Bloat, her newest venture. Heather tragically lost her leg in a motorcycle accident in 1993, which of course is devastating for all of the obvious reasons. But despite that, Heather considered that as an opportunity to perhaps go on to become the only disabled skier in the world to have 3 world records, which is no mean feat. As well as running many companies, Heather today is a passionate activist and does so much for the benefit of others. Our second panelist, right at the end, is Charlie Holt, Northeast-based serial entrepreneur who will not be, without doubt, someone many of you wouldn't already have met. As well as running his family business, Holt's Yard, Charlie today has invested in, scaled up, and of course, without doubt in the region, has built up one of the largest, most dominant businesses in the form of OpenCast software. Charlie also is the founder of Dynamo Northeast. And Charlie may not have said this to you at the beginning, but in case he didn't, let me just quickly let you know, he also previously ran for Mayor of the North of Tyne Combined Authority. but was not successful, which we will be talking a little bit more about this evening. Still a sore subject, Charlie, right? Our third panellist this evening is Andrew Hulbert, and thank you for travelling far and wide.
I feel like a complete southerner amongst the stage today. So
well, we're delighted to have you in the northeast of England, granted on the wrong side of the time, but that's a different conversation. Andrew is definitely a unique entrepreneur in that he knew that he wanted to build a business, sell a business, be financially independent, and retire from business, not from life, before the age of 40. Very few people have that clarity of thought, and very few people go on to achieve it. So I'm really looking forward.
And you're not yet 40?
Not yet, still not. Nearly.
And you're not really retired, so let's carry on with that.
Well,
He's being a father.
other than running a farm, he absolutely is.
That's
But
when the real
we'll,
work starts.
And he's paid for a lot of Botox as well.
Kevin, you can't say that, my friend. But anyway, we'll sorry. And our last panellist this evening is Kevin Fasting. Good friend of mine, of course, in case you didn't work it out, he's from Liverpool. Kevin had a really difficult start to his life as a consequence of his father disappearing, and still to this day hasn't been found. But that probably gave you the inspiration, not only to need to provide for your family in the absence of your father, but of course to make sure that perhaps if you did get the chance to meet your father again, he would be proud. To this day, Kevin has scaled up many businesses across the human capital, technology and legal sector, and Kevin not only is a friend, but also a client of mine and my firm. Thank you, all four of you, for agreeing to be with us this evening for our Confessions of an Entrepreneur live event. So, Heather, would you mind if we start with you? So I mentioned in the brief introductions there that, of course, not only were you homeless in your teens, but you catastrophically lost your leg in a motorcycle accident. Despite that, bearing in mind that would have been enough for most to conclude life was against them and perhaps go and live under a rock. Despite that, you've gone on to build many successful businesses. Where does the courage and the positivity come from?
To be honest, I think you're just born like that. I think it's in your genes, it's in your DNA, it's what you've dealt with in your life. People around you can support it, but it's funny, I've been asked loads of times these kind of questions, and I still can't work it out. Like, people say, oh, well, what about this, and analyze this, but I'm already, that's behind me, and let's get on with the next thing. So I think just maybe some of it came from a difficult childhood, but then why'd you get people from one family where someone's a complete nightmare and self-pitying and the other one's fine? So there has to be like these little bits of DNA that make you a survivor and go on to overcome certain types of adversity. But I do believe that if you get out of yourself and your own head and your own issues, then you don't worry about anything. Like, what's the worst thing that can happen? And the more things that happen to you, I've only died 4 times. I've worked in 5 war zones. I've had my body smashed to pieces. It's like, why worry? You're a banana skin away from death anyway, so just get on with it. Do all your dreams. Obviously, when you haven't got kids, it's much easier because nobody's dependent on you. But, you know, don't become an entrepreneur if you want to have a life, because you won't have one. And just work out who you are. Are you a soldier that's going to support those entrepreneurs, or are you someone that's going to drive everything forward and work out, do you want to be on a steam train in life, or do you want to be on a roller coaster? Work out who you are as an individual and what you like. You've now retired. I absolutely plan to retire because I started when I was 13, when I was 50. And it's just not happening. I'm 58 because then there's Brexit, then there's COVID, then there's the war and the Ukraine, and I'm responsible for 453 people. So every time I go, I can retire now, then it's like, yeah, but this is going on. So you have to then, you know, be prepared to not be emotionally involved with everything that you've done. And that's a difficult thing because everything that's driven me in my life is based on emotion, and it's based on making a difference and justice and so and so and so. So just be careful when you get involved in running your own business. If you're someone that really cares, you'll do it until the day you die, and you'll have to sleep when you're dead.
We'll come back to that concept in a second, Heather. Andrew, so before you set up your first business in your back bedroom, you had a 6-figure job in a big corporate. What was the absolute one thing that gave you the confidence or the need to walk away from employment and surety of income in pursuit of setting up a business and scaling it? What gave you that ultimate push to make a tough decision?
A bit like Heather, actually. I didn't really know where that came from. It was sort of just there. But actually, the more I reflect on it, I'm proper council estate working class family. I may not have an accent.
You can tell from the accent.
I may not have an accent like it, but people don't believe me. I was nearly killed when I was 15 as well. Yeah, actually, for me, it was a safety net. So in my family, community is the most important thing. So I genuinely have something like 73 immediate members of my family on both sides, and we all live within 10 minutes of each other. Now, the reality for me was when I was 26, 27, and I took that step out, I went back to my wife and I said, I'm going to leave this six-figure job and we're going to start a business. She said, no, absolutely no way. That's a stupid idea because we just got married, we just got our house, and we were about to have kids. So it was going to be very disruptive to what we were doing. And I had to have a conversation with myself. And I was like, well, look, what's the worst that can happen? A bit like what you said. And the reality was I lost my marriage, I lost my money, and I had to start all over again. Now, firstly, I believe, and I still believe this today, if I had to start all over again, I'd be really successful and I'd do it all again. I have an inner belief about that. But most importantly, because of the community roots of my family, if it all went wrong, I'd move back in with my mum and dad, go to the bedroom that I started in as a kid, and go again. And that was the worst thing that could happen to me. And although that might not be wonderful for my wife to hear, and we've been together for 20 years now with 2 kids, that was the reality for me internally. I believed in myself. I wasn't 100% sure it was going to work. I didn't know that bit, but I knew that if it didn't work, I would just come back stronger. And I could go and get a 100K job tomorrow. That's really not a problem for me. And I believe that deep down. And I think a lot of us have that same belief, not that we all like to admit it. But ultimately, it was my mum. I knew that I could call my mum up and say, I've messed this up, I'm coming back home. And she'd be like, great, what do you want for dinner? And we start all over again. And that's the reality.
Thanks, Andrew. Charlie, so before you returned to the Northeast to run the family business Holtsyard, you built a large marketing agency in London, right? And of course, the business was flying. You got it to 20 million revenue, and then 50 million revenue. And then, of course, in 2008, the wheels fell off the economy, and it materially impacted that business. Can you just tell me a little bit about that time and actually the positives you were able to take away of what was only a difficult situation?
I got fired. And I moved back to see my mum and dad in the Northeast. But yeah, I played that song Chumbawamba. I get knocked down, but I get up again, which is probably a theme tune for us all. And I just thought, I had 4 kids and plenty to go at, so I just kept going. Yeah.
But of course, when you've spent years building a business of material size and you lose your equity and you lose your employment, that's tough. Can we just really understand how it felt? Because it wasn't as breezy as I think perhaps you reflect, was it?
So I had, 20% of the business. I got...
And the business was worth then circa?
50 million quid or something like that. I had private equity in and 400 people, and I got slightly outmaneuvered by the private equity guys, whose the turnover, because of the credit crunch, it was a marketing business, so we were doing marketing for BAA, the launch of Terminal 5, we were doing food packaging, we were doing public relations work, marketing for tech businesses. The revenues dipped, the profits dipped, and the private equity guys swamped the business because they had rights if it went below certain levels and there was debt and stuff like that. And I was the chief exec. I had built the business by acquiring 5 other businesses and merging it together. And the perception was that I was the guy who'd been on the front foot, building the positive and selling the dream and doing the acquisitions, and that I wasn't the kind of guy who would squeeze the spreadsheets and make things keep in profit.
I resized the business at the time revenue was going backward, yeah?
It was the business, yeah. So they, like many private equity investors, they say the guy who's building the business isn't the guy who's going to, process eyes and all of that. So I was fired, but I wasn't really upset about that because that was the right business decision. You could got to disassociate your personal piece from the business piece.
Can I ask you a question? It was 2008. That was a massive crash time. Was
Yes,
that
yes. Yeah.
what would you have done differently? Like looking back on what
I
would
mean,
you
it was
have
a
done?
crash, so it wasn't our fault that, and I think they
Yeah,
handled
but then why
the,
would you have been fired? Because you just said that's what they should have done.
because of the inflection in the economy meant that there were no profits. We broke our bank covenants.
Yeah.
But
Why was that your fault?
It wasn't necessarily I wasn't.
Yeah.
It wasn't the macro wasn't my fault, but the man for the job was maybe a different person than somebody who'd been the positive sales sunshine guy and had to they got a CEO in who was much more process and accounting delivered.
And what did you learn from that changed your future decisions?
What did I learn?
Yeah.
Maybe in relation to how to fund a business that's growing. So, that was a private equity-backed business.
I think you just got to go again. I mean, the subsequent business that I set up has more established repeat revenues,
And no private equity in the cap table either.
and there's currently no private equity.
And
maybe that's a learning.
And preparing for crashes, because there will be more with the Straits of Hormuz. The whole economy's a nightmare. So people need to sort of think, what are they going to do? Where's your sinking fund? Where's your B plan, your C plan? Did you learn from that, from the 2008?
Some of that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm still on the seat
Because you
of
can
my
also
pants.
maximize those times when
Yep.
those situations happen. So yeah, when that 2008 crash happened for me, I basically was going through a divorce and came to a settlement and ended up with less money than I had before I was married, but that's another story. But it was funding the charities, so I saw where the economy was doing a roller coaster. So I said, okay, let's get out of the UK and just work in dollar, pound, and euro. And I just shifted a third, and bought properties. And then it went from $1.54 to $2. And then we managed to make 900,000 overnight for the charity to feed the Bronx for 3 years. So in times, the reason I was being devil's advocate, because of course I know what's going to happen, but is that you must always plan for everything outside of your own goldfish bowl and always look at the macro economy, because I find that people just look at what's happening in England. And when we had COVID, I said to my accountant, buy every Stephen Cooker and GE steel machinery thing that you can for the Peterlee factory. And he went, we don't need that many machines. And I said, Brexit is the divorce with no documents. That's going to be a complete disaster for everybody that's been duped into that. And then COVID's going to be X, Y, and Z. So we bought every chip. But we kept 160 families alive by siphoning off small things for them. So all I'm saying is there's going to be another massive crash in this economy. So whatever businesses you're doing, work out, what's going to happen from where you're going to get your procurement to where it's going to end up, because everything's going to go up 35, 45, 55% if you're working in manufacturing. It's going to be like 2008 because of this redhead idiot in America.
And we'll come back to a number of the points you've made there, Heather, because without doubt the macroeconomic environment and the geopolitical environment are challenging, and we all have to deal with it. It is what it is, and we can't change that, but we have to be educated enough to make decisions with that in mind.
No, but you also can change it, so that's another discussion.
Kevin, can I move on to you? I mentioned in the introduction that, of course, when you were young, your father wrote a letter and told you and your family that he fundamentally couldn't cope and left the family home and has never been seen since. Yeah. Can you just tell us a little bit about how that genuinely not only felt but has shaped every decision you have made since in your life?
Yeah. He's looking for clickbait here, isn't he? He's trying to get he's trying to get me to be emotional. But yeah, like my man up here, Andrew, I'm working class. However, I sound working class. He's obviously a little proper working class. He's a little bit posher than me, which put me at a disadvantage. But yeah, listen, look, everyone's got a unique founder story. We all know that. And mine is no different, but mine is probably a little more unusual and potentially a little more sad, let's say. So 21st of November, Friday, 2003, the day before any rugby fans here, England won the World Cup. Johnny Wilkinson. I'm not a rugby fan, by the way. I'm a footy fan. My father went missing, so he left us, me and my 4 sisters, and he left us a note to say he wasn't coming back. So for me, I look at that that day of my life. I was in university, and my life before and my life after, it completely changed. 23 years later, he's still missing, and we're still looking for him. But what that born out of me was I changed into this guy, and I set up a business. A couple of years later, albeit, but Kevin Edwards. So my father, Kevin Edward Fasting, and I set up that business. And initially, it was to then, you know, advertise on bus stops, because many of you guys probably won't know, but rightly so, all the attention goes to the missing kids, right? Madeleine McCann, you can think about that. But 250,000 people go missing every year. Most of them are adults, and the reason why they're not reported upon is because they come back. So adults will go missing and come back, and it's a massive pandemic. So I've been supported by the Missing People charity, who still supports us to this day. But after about a week, the police don't support you, because if an adult goes, you know, he left a note saying, "Sorry, Kev, and the babies, we let you down." So then it's on us to go and find them. So for me, it was kind of, I changed that day when he went, and it's quite different from other founders. Like, mine was born out of emotion and getting angry and thinking, why is the world still going on? You know, it stopped for me. So yeah, that was almost kind of my origin story. And listen, 23 years later, I don't want to lose him twice. He's probably not coming back, right? But I've built a legacy. And I thought to myself, well, actually, after a year or so, I was advertising on bus stops, and he's a proud guy, my dad, and if I brought him back, he'll be embarrassed, right? He's gone because he thought he'd let us down. He was suffering from mental health. He hadn't, of course. But if I drag him back now through advertisements, he ain't going to be happy. I know my dad. He's my best mate. I'm a daddy's boy. So what could I do then? So after 6 months, I was like, well, what can I do? And I've got 4 sisters and a mum. What can I do? I can build financial intelligence, and I can change their lives. We tied them all off one by one. And then a couple of my friends who used to work with in recruitment, they come out the woodwork saying, "Kev, how have you done this?" I was like, "Am I allowed to swear?"
Please.
I was like, "I don't fucking know, but I'm doing all right." And then I set a few of them up in business. And then all of a sudden, we've got the basis of a group. And fast forward today, we've got 250, 300 staff, multiple industries, you name it. I've tried it. Financial services, law, and recruitment, human capital are my main 3 successful businesses, and property. And what I try and do is then change other people's lives. So I think my dad going that day turned me into this guy, who was a better guy than I was before he went. So yeah.
Well, thanks for sharing that. It's incredible how positives can come out of catastrophic, really sad situations. Kevin, so thank you for sharing that story. Andrew, just to go back to you, to change the tempo slightly. Obviously, you definitely are unique, not only because you have those shoelaces,
Yes.
which I've just seen for the first time, which are eye-catching. But also, it's unusual that an entrepreneur who wants to create a business of material size will do it knowing they will sell that business and retire at 40. Very rarely do I speak to entrepreneurs who want to retire so soon.
Yeah.
Can you just tell us a little bit about not only how you had that level of clarity so early as a young entrepreneur, and why 40? What did that mean to you at that time?
So I'm going to say the most offensive thing I'm going to say all night. I thought 40 was really old, right?
You've just lost 95%
I know,
of the room.
and I'm sorry. And as a 39-year-old now, I know it's not old, but apart from I need more sleep. Clarity came from my upbringing. So my dad was in a factory from the age of 15 to 62. My mum was in Sainsbury's, raised 3 kids. She did a paper round. She made sandwiches. She was a cleaner. She did everything. So I grew up seeing my mum and dad working near minimum wage and actually trying to raise a family at the same time. And I saw how hard that was. And I sort of saw life as a curve. So you grow up, you go to school, you maybe do an apprenticeship, or you go to university, you go into work, you work till what? You're 65, 70, take your pension, then you die. And actually, so this curve, I wanted to get off that curve as early as possible. I didn't really have the clarity of retiring by the time of 40 until my business was about 20 million turnover roughly. And it was middle of COVID, which we grew in COVID. And we were a property services business in London where all the offices were empty. We grew 12% in that year, and then grew 77% the year after that as people started coming back. I had some clarity because my daughter had been born in 2019 and my son in 21. And my wife sort of pulled me to one side and said, "Look, you're working so hard, you're going to miss the kids growing up." And I said, just like, give me some time, just give me a few more years. I just need to get this done and I need to get out. And sort of 40 was the absolute point. I was 35 at the time. And that was sort of the absolute milestone that I'd have it done by then. And luckily for me, it was only 2.5 years after we had that conversation that I was able to finish. We exited to private equity. We had a fantastic investment event, and it was enough for me to step back. So really, it comes from seeing my mum and dad work incredibly hard for low pay and not wanting that myself because I wanted to get off the curve. But also I did exactly the same. As soon as I made my money, I gave my dad money so he could retire 5 years early. I bought all my sisters their houses, bought my mum and dad their house, bought my dad his dream car, bought my own house, which is a big farm over in Bicester.
What was
in
the
Oxford.
dream car?
His dream car, he wanted a Cobra, AC Cobra.
Oh,
And when I was a kid, he had it up in his garage. It was an AC Cobra with a woman like strewn all over the front of it. I didn't buy him the woman, but I bought him the car. And I bought him lots of cars since then, and we have many between us now. But actually, it was wanting to get off the curve. And it was also a promise to my wife, and that's partly when I did finish up going back to being a dad, which I do today, it was like one of the most rewarding things, trying to make up. What I didn't want to do is wake up when I was 65, no offense to anyone who's 65, and go, fuck, missed my opportunity, wish I would have gone back and done that. I sort of needed to get it done. What I know about myself is I am really good at achieving things. If I put my mind to it, I have laser focus like few other people that I've met. And for that 10 years of my life, it was exiting the business, and that's what I was doing. Today, I do various other things, which I'm sure we'll come on to, but yeah, that was really where it came from.
Thanks, Andrew. Heather, I mentioned earlier that, of course, in your teens you were homeless. In the northeast of England is where you were born. Can you just tell us a little bit about how you went about deciding what your first business was going to be, and actually how you got that business off the ground? Because the most challenging thing for any entrepreneur, I think, is having the idea and then setting up one's first business. How did that come about for you?
Well, it's interesting, just to correct you slightly. So I didn't move up here till I was 3 months, and I should speak like him, who's not really posh. I was born in Aldershot. My dad was in the army, and he fell in love with my mum, who was the daughter of a general, and they ran off at 16 and came up here because the parents didn't want them to be together because he wasn't of the level that her father wanted. So came up here. My mum left us when I was 9. She disappeared, left a note, and we didn't see her for 5 years. And so I became the mother of the household, and my dad was actually the theatre royal director, you know, back in the late 80s, mid 80s. And he thought it was a reincarnation of Richard Wagner, so he created the Wagner Arts Society, and he was just a complete loophole. And he lived in Lambton, which I was talking to one of your colleagues here about in Washington. We started in Sulgrave, for anyone that knows Washington, which has got all the wires around the council houses. And we used to play knocking 9 doors and go in the sewages and stuff. And then he managed to get us into Donwell, which was dead posh. And but it was all fake. He had a car, he had, you know, the house, but it was all debt. And every week the bailiffs would come in and we'd be carried out on the sofa, and then there would be a different car in. And I just thought, I'll never get in debt in my life, which I never have to this day. I just live by my means, whether it's on the floor homeless or wherever. And then basically my mum turned up when my dad went to prison because he borrowed money. You know those YTS schemes where they employ people? Well, he wasn't employing anyone, he was just pretending he was, and doing this Wagner Arts group, and he created this, what became like the Lord of the Rings type thing. But he went to prison, and my mum then turned up, and I hadn't seen her. He'd been hiding her letters. And so I'd ran his businesses, and I mean, we found paperwork, he used to get us to write, you know, business letters, and it was like school kids writing, and I was like, how on earth did he send this off? So from the age of 9 until 14, I was just school all day, working all night, and so I slept 4 hours for many, many years, and I still do to this day because you end up in this routine. And he went to prison, pretended he went to open, you know, whatever. And my mum turned up, I hadn't seen her for years, took us down south with her theatre actor that she'd ran off with at the Theatre Royal called Charles Stapley, who, if anyone remembers Crossroads, was the antique dealer. And he'd been married 2 times before and was like, I don't want these children. So I ran away from home, lived on a fun fair, and eventually ended up on the streets in Waterloo. And then this tramp was peeing next to my hair. And even though I was homeless, I was still vain. And I was like, that's disgusting. So I went for a shower at 10p at Waterloo Station. And then I went to a croissant shop. And this is when I became an entrepreneur, because I'd never had a job. And because I'm skinny, people think I don't eat a lot, and I do a lot of sport. And he said, you can eat as many croissants as you like. So I ate about 30, and not knowing until this day later that actually I was eating all his profits. So he fired me after a week, and then I was like, that's terrible. He said I could eat as many as I like. So I went back, and my dad had been let out of prison for good behaviour after a year and a half, hadn't changed. And I'd gone to the dentist, and I opened this magazine. It was an American magazine, and it had these stick-on bras. And I was one of those skinny girls with massive boobs that always got in the way for sport. And because my mum wasn't around, we used to strap them down with some black masking tape because Dad didn't know what a bra was. And I thought, what a brilliant idea. They've got these things called Jolly Bust, and they were stick-on bras, and they came in A, B, C, D, E, F, G. And I thought, that's fantastic. I said, you can wear a backless dress without any straps. So I pretended, and this is the entrepreneurial side I learned of my dad without going across to the corruption side. So I set up a PO box in Knightsbridge, because I'd learned you could do it for like 10 quid a month. And I imported these bras and took them around to different places and grew that business. But I was still not old enough to have a legal bank account. So I'd gone back to my mum and got her to sign the back of those pay-only checks. And built that up and sold it when I was 17 for 250k, which was a lot of money back then. And the only reason I wanted to do is my mum wanted to leave her snobby boyfriend because she'd gone from a physically and mentally abusive dad to a boyfriend that was mentally abusive, so she thought she'd gone up a rung on the ladder. And she then died a week later, and that's when I went, money doesn't mean anything. I can make it, I know how to do it. And when you're not attached to money, it comes. It's really weird. You know, loads of disasters happen, everything happens. But when your focus is not penny pinching, and that's why corporate people fail with their box ticking, penny pinching ways, because they're not looking at the macro and they're so attached to it. And investors and banks and things, you know, their balls shrink when they see something that's just terrifying. When I did the Beyond Meat burger, which became a billion IPO in America, I gave the whole of the Northeast an opportunity, and I bought the Coty Procter Gamble factory in Seaton Delaval. I bought Peter Lee, and I said, this is going to be the next massive thing. Let's do this for the Northeast. And Ronnie Campbell was brilliant. He went to Parliament and said, Heather Mills has got this thing, and I'm not vegan, but my kids are, and it's going to be massive. But everybody just squeezed their balls together. And I say balls because it was mainly men sitting on the board going, oh, I don't think this vegan thing's going to be anything. And that could have been the whole of the Northeast. So you have these visions and things that don't happen. But anyway, long story short was stick-on bras. And then it ended up 2 for 1, because when I was selling them round the doors before we did the franchise on them, we had a few women complain because I had hairy nipples. And I was like, well, that's a 2 for 1. I've just given you a free wax. What are you complaining about?
Insightful. I'm not really sure what to say, but there you are. Kevin, obviously you kindly shared with us an insight into your father's decision to leave and not return. And of course, you went to university, and straight out of university you got a job in recruitment. Could you just talk to me about how you went from an employee in a recruitment agency to setting up your first business? How did that happen?
Probably from day one, to be honest with you, because I had that, you know, thing in the background about my dad going missing, and it's like, look, how do I affect? I was brought up working class, unlike this guy maybe, but I'm sure he was. He's the poshest working class dude. But yeah, so I always had this little, you know, thing in the back of my mind where I wanted to do it, and that was my first job post university, where it was like, look, I'd done sports psychology and sociology in university, and I'll be honest with you, I was still reeling from my dad going missing. I went to university and I was there to, you know, escape my, you know, foundations in Liverpool and what my friends were doing and be around other people and, you know, to meet girls, right? Let's be honest with you. And from that point onwards, then after university, you then stay in Leeds and you get a job in recruitment. And all of a sudden, I'm now seeing people who look and sound like me, who are owning businesses. So it kind of raises the floor and raises the ceiling. So that was the kind of first key thing for me there. And then from that point, it was like, listen, even today, we'll probably talk about it later, right? Imposter syndrome. Imposter syndrome. This is the first time I've done this. Absolutely. You said I can swear. Absolutely shitting myself, right?
But he's good though, isn't he? He's doing a great job. He's doing
But this
a
is
great job.
imposter syndrome, right? And it was imposter syndrome, and it's still every day. So from day one, it was imposter syndrome. So I went in a room like this, and there was 200 recruiters, and it was like, I don't think I can do this. I'm just some blagging scouser. But then I looked at it and thought, well, if all these 200 people can do it, surely I can't be the 201st. So let's do it. So let's put myself under pressure. So I went in there and thought, right, my main focus here is not to get sacked, just to be good enough, right? I'm introvert, trapped in an extrovert body. So this is the way I live my life. And it was that, and that's kind of what forged everything else from my life on there. So yeah, it's obviously getting a little bit cheesy, but for me, it's always, these guys obviously have built massive businesses. For me, it's all driven from emotion, and it's, you know, where now I've got bigger businesses, I now have to employ people who are obviously a lot more operational than me. So for me, you know, come at it from a different angle from these guys, but it's all about the origin story and all the rest of it. And then when you realise you're probably reaching out your depth a little bit, hire people who are smarter than you. So now I've got a CFO, I've got an MD, I've got a CEO, who are all better than me. I'm too emotional, I'm too colloquial, right? I'm talking, I'm chatting, again, I'm going to swear here, I'm chatting shit, but what my thing is, I've surrounded myself with better people than me, and you drop the ego and you realise what you're really good at, and probably there's a part of me that's really good at one thing, maybe, more than other people, but then you realise what other people are better than you are at. So probably going off on a tangent here, sorry Carl.
No, it's actually a really, really good point, because that's what Richard Branson did.
Yeah.
Actually just took everybody else's ideas.
Well, he didn't
and
even
everybody
understand
else.
VAT and corporation tax.
No,
did he?
nothing,
Yeah.
nothing. But he's really good at just taking ideas and putting great people together. But entrepreneurial, bottom line is,
Yeah.
you're the foundation and the seed of it, and that's what creates something massive.
Yeah, precisely.
Charlie, so when you came back to the Northeast to run Holt's Yard, the family business, of course, you then went on to found Opencast. Could you just tell us a little bit about the decisions you consciously made early on with Opencast when it comes to how the business has gone on to scale so significantly since? So I'm now really interested in the foundations that you put in place with scale in mind, please, Charlie.
You did ask me, you did prepare me for questions about family business.
Don't worry, I'm
And
coming back to you on
I was
those.
interestingly reflecting on the fact that some of these guys haven't had the parents in the business. And the challenge that I've had is having my dad and my sister and my other sister in the business, which is a whole different set of challenges. And sometimes I wished I didn't have them in the business. So I got experience because I'm the fourth generation in the family business. And that had some responsibilities, you know, don't mess it up, but some privileges of learning from watching other people close at hand. And some challenges when I was in London for 20-something years, building that business, which was hit by the credit crunch storm. And so I had it in my DNA, I suppose, you know, to set something else up, unemployable by anyone else, and still keen to try and build value and capital in a business. And with Opencast, I was principally, I started with a partner, and I was principally outside the business as in the governance, chairing, providing the plumbing, in a sector I understood, professional services, time and money, like law firm, like marketing agency, the business that I'd watched. We're providing software developers into other corporates. And we got into HMRC, who have got a big office in Newcastle, when Francis Maude was involved in the sort of Doge government efficiency push from David Cameron and his government, when they mandated that all the multinational businesses in government contracts had to provide 20% of their revenue to ecosystem partners, small businesses. So we got in to HMRC, and cutting a long story short, we were in there during COVID. My team are local to the northeast. HMRC's team in the tech centre are local to the northeast. So it was very good chemistry for when the challenging aspects of COVID happened. And who did they trust but our team? So we wrote half of the furlough scheme for HMRC. We wrote the self-employed income support, the freelance furlough. We also wrote the software for Eat Out to Help Out, if you remember that. Random. We wrote software for a number of different treasury ideas to kind of keep the economy going, because the team that we had, 50 or 60 people in HMRC, they knew the components on which HMRC built its many different systems. Single sign-on, so that you have your NI number, your surname, your postcode, and you can get in. And all of these components, so that when they said, we need a system where if you're a freelance taxpayer, taxi drivers in London, always, whenever I chat to them, they're always, greatly appreciative of that system, amongst others. And we knew the 15 pieces of the jigsaw that you needed for that system, and we then wrote 3 other pieces of jigsaw for spraying the money, taking and pushing the money out rather than turning it back in, and that got us going. Yeah. So that's as a business, we were 80 people before COVID, and after COVID, we were 400 people. And the bits that I had in place from the battle scars from previous were, what would private equity do? So I hired a very senior team of experts, CEO, CFO, sales people, officers, who were all from the northeast at that stage, but who were in the sort of fast track in Accenture, Capgemini, BT. They were in pre-COVID times, they were hitting 40 and getting promoted, and promotion meant they would live out of a suitcase in London often, or internationally, so the lifestyle wasn't great for them to be having 5-10 good corporate years, but out of family life and the lifestyle stuff. So I tempted people to join the business with equity, with options in the business. The same sort of salaries that they would get in corporate life, but with a big equity upside package. And that was a good idea from a strictly business perspective. So I'm delegating down. That seems to have worked well.
And obviously, professional services is all about the quality of the individuals at the front line running the businesses. Kev, in terms of your Curve Group business, which of course is staffing, how have you gone about, like Charlie has, creating equity alignment between you and your employed C-suite?
Yeah, well, you're probably going to tell me off on this because you think I've been too generous, and I probably have, but again, I think this plays into maybe my story. So I always had, again, we spoke before, some insecurity of what am I doing here? From this type of background, I've done really well. How have I got here? So part of me, a little bit thought there's a cheat code here because I've created something of value. So how can I get the best people and competitors in my market? They're not going to work for me. Who am I? And it was, okay, well, I can bring you on this journey. So why don't you come on, you hit these numbers, and I'll give you a piece of the pie. Fast forward 10 years, and I've given away a lot of the pie. But hopefully, through Carl, the pie is going to be big, and we are going to exit for value for me and the shareholders. But actually, there's a meeting in the middle, I believe, because also you look after really good people. You look after really good people. So, sometimes you do get it wrong, don't get me wrong. As an entrepreneur, you pull the trigger, right? And that's probably the difference between us and other people who are entrepreneurs. And hopefully, as long as you're not, too stupid, you get it right more than you get wrong. Now, I've pulled the trigger, as these guys have, more than most. And if you've done your due diligence, you get it right more times than you get it wrong. So therefore, I arrive at like a cap table with unbelievable people, and we've had to exit 1 or 2 people along the way. But what we found is we've got a massive cap table, a massive company of good people, and we take them on the journey and we change those lives as well. So for me, other people do it very differently. There was a competitor of ours in the recruitment industry. They did it completely the opposite way. So I won't name them because it's not fair, but he had 100%, 99% of his company. He built it to a 200-man recruitment company, similar to me. He owned 99% of it. He lived and worked in world-class offices, but they rented it. Whereas what I done is I bought the offices and I shared it with my equity partners, so we were the landlords. So through COVID, we weren't going to evict ourselves. And afterwards, his business went under, unfortunately for him. But I was never going to lose my guys, because whether they like me or not, they're stuck with me, golden handcuffs, almost. We're all going to be millionaires together. Obviously, you know, I'm diluting my check. And I'm doing that. A, I do think I'm a nice guy, but also, I ain't stupid, I'm commercial. So looking after these people also works. There's two ways of doing it. And listen, if you can do it and own the whole of the pie and get out, great. Personally, I don't think I'm good enough for that. So I need to bring people along the journey. And, you know, it's worked out, hopefully. Well, when you exit us, it's worked out.
Exactly. No pressure on me. So, Kevin, just to ask a question, because you have set up many entities within your group, and you've gave the individuals running those businesses equity rather than share options, which is perhaps the approach many take, including Charlie. Why hard equity and not share options?
So we're doing share options now because with our bigger group, and now we're 2.5 years away from a sprint to do that, we'll give EMIs to obviously our staff members. But for me, when I'm when I'm convincing or coaxing a £1 million biller to come over from me, he's going to want to be a business partner. So when I first set up my business, it was important for me to obviously have access to the bank account, to understand VAT, to understand corporation tax, to understand personal tax, where it comes throughout the year. So for me, it was, you know, I'm not pulling the wool over these guys' eyes. I want to bring them on as business partners. And 8 times out of 10, it works because you get really good people. There's other investment companies that do what we do, but they're not really investment companies. What they do is say you own businesses, but it's actually not. So for me, I give them hard equity from day one. We put them on the bank. I teach them all the financial IQ that they need to. Some are not too bothered, right? Some just want to see the top line or the bottom line or whatever. But I treat them like proper business partners out of respect and because I want to do right by them. And if you do that, 8 times out of 10, it kind of works. So for me, looking after people, you can't get it right. Sometimes I do get it wrong, absolutely. I've invested in some guys, and at day one I thought, oh my God, this guy's unbelievable. And by year 2, it's like, you know,
He's unbelievable, but for the other reasons.
Well, exactly. Yeah. But it's like when you go into business with someone, it's like a housemate, right? It's not like a man or a wife, it's like a housemate. If you are going to, in university, be with a housemate, right? It's like, it's not about the looks, it's not about the charisma, it's about, can you have disagreements? Do you like spending time with this person? Yeah. So when you are in business with someone, I think long term, it's like that almost. So for me, it doesn't, 2 times out of 10, it doesn't work, and they win. But 8 times out of 10, it works for me. So it's about doing the right thing. And it sounds a little bit cheesy, but I think it's karma's a thing, innit? You know, if you do the right thing over and over again, guess what? Some people are not going to agree with you, but it comes back to you. It's like, Kev's a good guy, and he does the right thing. And guess what? If you're capable, it works long term.
Yeah, on my podcast.
Can I just say one thing on that?
Sure.
Because I've seen it both ways. So 100% agree, also being an emotional entrepreneur. And doing things for the right reason is that my staff have been with me, most of them 20, 30 years, because of that, because I've took care of them and they've took care of me, and we're just a great family. And like you said, you get the small percentage, but now we know they're in 2 weeks, they're in for life, or they're out, and they're always paid more and they're always taken care of. The one mistake I did make, which was a fascinating lesson for me, because when you have your own ethics and your own beliefs and the way that you work, and you're young, which I'm not anymore, but when I was, I believed everyone's the same. Yeah, let's do. And then you wake up to realize actually the person that's worked really hard on the factory floor, I gave a rise in position, but it was like putting a square peg in a round hole, and they were absolutely useless at that. But they were brilliant back at the factory position. I did a cooperative business once where I said, let's just see what happens where everyone's paid the same, and no matter what their position is. And it was a nightmare. Oh my God, you'd think that when everyone's paid the same, everyone would work their arse off as much as each other to make the business work. And it was like, well, that's not my job. That's their job. That's this, that's that. It was an absolute disaster as a cooperative. So, but paying people well, giving them equity,
But you
shares,
do get better. You
dividends.
get better at it, don't you? Like
Yeah,
you
you
make
get-
the mistakes and you
Yeah.
realise you give that person and actually that personality. You now at my ripe old age of 40, 27. You start
Use
to
Botox, yeah.
allegedly. But no, you do start to see it. And the mistakes I made when I was 20, 28, 29, you get better at it. You're never perfect, but it's like, when I think back to some of the decisions I made and the equity I give some people at the start of my, biggest businesses, and we've had to exit them years later,
Yeah.
and I'm thinking, now, Kev, what the hell were you doing? So you get better at it. But that's being an entrepreneur.
But you have this day coming up, which I really look forward to for you. So I gave away 20% of the business, and it went to 15 people roughly. So I did have the day where we had the big payout, and we're all together drinking champagne, and all the money landed in everyone's bank accounts on the same day. So everyone's bringing up their bank account, showing it to each other, and people were paying off their mortgages, paying off debt. One of my guys, he always wanted to buy a bright purple Ferrari. That was his goal in life, to buy the Ferrari, and he bought the Ferrari. But you get that moment where, yes, you've got tens of millions have come
It's
in,
got to be
amazing.
single.
But it's
gotta be
everyone.
single.
He's
My
not.
God,
He's
not for a billion would I step in a
He's still
purple
rent.
Ferrari.
He's still rent. But not only do you get your money, which is amazing, but you see 15 other people, or however many it is that you care about, also becoming millionaires or whatever that they're doing with the amount of money that they've got.
Yeah.
That feels so much more wonderful than you getting the money. Because all those people that took a risk, I was lucky. I gave 15 senior people came to my team. I had 100% retention over 10 years. I worked very hard on those 15, and I wouldn't change a single one of them. But actually, I got to see them all on the same day with the money in the account, and that was incredibly special. What a day I will never forget in my life.
Yeah, but what's brilliant about what you've done is you set a plan, it's happened amazingly, which doesn't normally happen, and you've said that this is enough money and you're happy with it and you want to focus on your kids. One of the biggest things that I've seen is that I've met people, I've dated a few of them where they've had absolutely nothing and they built up their businesses and they said, when I'm a millionaire, it's a bit like Rodney and Del Boy. When I'm a millionaire, they get to be a millionaire, then they get to be a 10 millionaire, then they get to be a 100 millionaire. And one of them that I dated when I was 19, that helped, is now a multi-billionaire, still miserable, still no time with his family, still addicted to money, still thinking 2 billion's not enough, still.
Yeah.
That's when you need psychological help. It's like, set your plan and understand that. And that's what you've managed to do, which is a rare thing because people get addicted to that adrenaline and that money and proving, and that is just down to psychological insecurities.
It's a question for everybody. How much is enough?
Exactly.
How much is enough? That's a different answer for everybody.
Yeah.
You also said it earlier, but when you don't let money control you, and I was lucky to get the volume I did, the passive income is huge.
Yeah.
Interest, investment, low risk, more money just comes. And it's almost embarrassing from that perspective. But there was, everyone has a number, and really we should be considerate of that number. But also, I may retire for 10 years with the kids. They don't want to know me anymore, and I may go back and start something else. I'll be a really good entrepreneur if I do, but I don't need to. And actually, when you have choice, it sort of changes your life really
But is it the number though? Like us on this stage and everyone in this audience, right? Everyone has got a journey, and you want to be there. But when you get, we can also attest to this. When you get there, it's then you move the goalposts. So what I realised a long time ago was actually wherever you get, you just move the goalposts. Because my target first was to find my dad, then retire my mum and my sisters, and I'd done that. And then it was to help my friends and family, blah, blah, blah. Even now, like, what are you on about? So the thing for me is enjoying the journey and, doing that well, because otherwise that's where you will, drive yourself mad.
And something we'll talk about later is purpose, because actually you need to know why you're doing the things you do.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're a rudderless ship, aren't you? Heather, earlier on you talked about the fact that if you want 9 to 5, if you want balance, don't be an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
Can we just talk about that? Because actually, I think nowadays people are consistently focused on this balance, wanting to be great in all areas of life. Is that possible when you're building a business, in your opinion?
It is, as long as you set your boundaries and you have the personality that gets up at 4 o'clock while the kids are still asleep, clears all your emails between 4 to 6:30 before they wake up, then takes them to school. So I used to separate my time. I'm literally like, which is what I had to do when my mum left. It was like, I need to get up. My dad always wears 2 shirts because he was a sweaty bugger. And then I'd have to do a shirt for me, a shirt for my brother, a shirt for my sister. We had no money, so I had to run from Washington to us with Comprehensive. And then 3 times a week do 200 lengths. And, you know, the things that you think are really unfair and hard when you're young, you know, end up becoming what makes you later down the line. What was the question again? I've gone off on a
Is
tangent.
balance possible?
Yeah,
Balance.
I was
Yeah.
just thinking
Can you
Kate's
be an
stadium.
entrepreneur and successfully build a big business that can be sold and get balance? Is that actually possible?
Well, it depends what your balance is, doesn't it? So for me, I would do that, and then I was like, people say Heather doesn't switch off, but when I'm on holiday, you cannot get me on the telephone. Never. I don't do social media. I don't look at it. The team do it. I'm not interested in anything like that. If I'm on holiday, I'm with the family, and there is no phone. It's like there's one emergency phone, and if anyone ever called it, which is called the bat phone, they're fired if they haven't thought through every single thing that they should be doing that I've taught them for years. So you can set balance if you don't get much sleep, which is I've got my 4 hours a day, and you need to be 100% focused, because with kids, it's like, it's not about, in fact, they're worse when you give them too much time. They take you for granted if you're a stay-at-home parent. They're like, oh, you're just always there. But when they see you do things, they sort of become more aspiring. So morning, drop the kids off school, work all day, kids finish, pick them up, bedtime story, and then work till midnight. So is that a balance? You know, maybe not, but it meant it was 100% focused on business, 100% focused on the kids. And this is the weakness in the market at the moment, because they think, oh, well, we won't really employ a woman because she's of an age where she might get pregnant, then she's on maternity leave, then she's on this. But actually, you know, ask someone to do something, ask a busy woman. She can do 50,000 things. And she's not on the golf course talking about what the P&L spreadsheet's going to be. So, yeah, you can have a balance, but only if you don't sleep much.
Yeah, I guess everything's relative, right, is the point. So
Yeah.
for you, balance is 4 hours a night.
Yeah.
And when you're on holiday, switching off. For some people, that would be absolutely the wrong side of a sustainable balance,
Yeah.
and therefore everything is relative. Andrew, can we just come to you? Obviously, you had one single focus when building your business, which wasn't lifestyle.
Yeah.
It wasn't about balance, because actually you were all in.
That's
at
right,
the
yeah, yeah.
sacrifice of being a great husband, a great father, a great friend, but with one eye on complete financial independence. What were the things you did in the last years prior to selling the PE that you think had the biggest impact on the value you sold the business for?
Yeah, I really believe, I don't believe in balance. I was all in, and actually I wasn't a good husband and father and friend at that time, because I was busy focused on the business every minute of every day. If I went on holiday, I took my laptop with me, and I could just never switch off, and that's hard. In terms of adding value, I mean, many things. Just for me personally, just towards the exit, and this is maybe good advice with what you were saying. Before I sold, I started working with a business psychologist called Stuart from Pearl Candola for about 6 to 8 weeks in advance of getting ready to exit, because I don't come from money, and obviously I was going to come into tens of millions, which is going to be a big number. And we worked about, they say something like 85% of men who sell their businesses go into depression within 12 months afterwards. And we talked about we're swimming towards an island, and we know we're going to get to that island. And when we get there, what are we going to do? So it was like, say you sell a business and you go and sit in the Bahamas for 4 weeks, eventually you're going to get bored. So it was like, what are the things that you're going to do afterwards? That's why I bought a farm, focused on being a dad, did lots of stuff with my family. I planted my own forest. I'm a big blood donor. I had all these different things that I was starting to focus on because I knew it was coming. It was important for the business that I was under control, because when you are an entrepreneur, and you'll get to this point where you can touch that money, someone has written it down on a bit of paper and you know how much you're going to get, then the touch paper is lit. And then you've got to keep your shit together at that time, because that's the most vulnerable time, I think, for most leaders and entrepreneurs, because they're getting ready towards an exit. So probably one of the things that prepared the business was me and my headspace, and working with Stuart was incredible, and I'd recommend it 1,000%. And he wrote me a report, and he said, you won't understand this now, but you will in the future. And I go back and read that sometimes. The other thing in prep, so probably 3 years before, when I said that I lit the touch paper with my wife and said I was going to exit, I hired a whole C-suite team. So I was unbalanced for the first 6 or 7 years of that business, without doubt. But then I hired a whole team, including a new CEO. And anybody who goes to hire their own replacement when it's your baby that you've built it, that is a challenge as well. But you have to realize that I'm just this founder kid in my bedroom who was 27, whose business got to 50 million and 500 staff, and everything got a bit out of control. And you need to hire the grown-ups. I talked about bringing the grown-ups in. And actually, I wanted older men who wore ties and had grey hair who could actually tell us what was going on with the financials, etc. So I built a team that was ready to exit, and I built a team that when the investors came in, I wasn't front and centre because I'd hired that team. And I'd stepped back to non-exec about 9 months in advance. And actually, I was in the room when the deal was done, and I was part of the process, but I wasn't the guy. There was a different person who was a CEO who had way bigger experience than me, had done loads more M&A than I had, and was the right candidate to take us through. So the two things, I prepared myself psychologically, and I've been so happy since the deal has been done and the life I have now, but also I built a team that was exit ready. And I do a bit of M&A myself now. Many entrepreneurs, they get to the exit point, but they're still critical in the running of the business, and they'll sit in a room and tell you that they're not. And it's just bollocks. I mean, it really is that straightforward. Think about it well in advance of the exit.
Can I just say one comment on that, which is 'cause you're absolutely spot on, but be careful who you allow to invest in your business. So all my businesses I'd ran myself. I was only director. I actually didn't even know the detail of the being the director and the responsibilities of it, because it was just always me doing 9 businesses, intercompany, director loans. Oh, that one's struggling a bit. Let's push the cash flow over there. Let's go over here. And when the vegan thing finally, after 30 years, started to go like this, people went, oh my God, we didn't know she did the Beyond Meat, blah, 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 blah. And then everyone came after us, like the Unilevers, the Upfields, all that. But trying to find an ethical investor was really difficult as a vegan business, because we didn't want the meat and dairy industry, we didn't want this, we didn't want that. So we eventually found this German company, which were family business, 9 billion food company, really nice CEO, really fantastic. But it was the people beneath them. So my relationship was with the CEO, and I said, okay. So I sold 25% of the business to scale further in the Northeast, because it was either sell at 45 million or basically continue to keep scaling. And knowing that loads of crap vegan products were going out there tasting like that cardboard table, this is not going to turn things. So we took the 25%. What was fascinating is I'm in the factory with my hairnet on 6 days a week. I get changed on the train, bit of deodorant, run into Parliament, do a gala, pulling the gala dress on with the urine all over the Newcastle train, and everyone going, oh, isn't she always at these galas? And I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. These people came in, they did 18 months due diligence with PwC to come in and see if they wanted to invest in the company. And they said, we need 16 people to replace Heather. And I went, well, that's just bloody stupid. I said, are they only working 9 to 5? Because that's just stupid. And they went, no, this is what we need. And I said, whoa, we're a profitable business. We had no debt, no invoice finance, no asset finance. I had funded everything. And I was just like, just ghost me. Or not ghost me, I get told off for that. Shadow me for 6 months. And you'll see you only need 5 or 6 people. And I will consult and still be heavily involved in the business. They put these 16 people in. What a disaster it was. Within 3 months, they reversed the business by 2 million because they all wanted a special iPhone. They all wanted to get procurement. This is a 9 billion company who literally should know the best pricing for procurement. We were making 60% from recycled materials, and they were paying 174 for coconut oil that I get for 97 pence from Kerala, direct from the farmers. I was like, you are doubling this. So I was going insane, going, hang on a second, you're literally destroying the business. So my message would be careful who you bring in. Yes, the people in suits and the ties are fine, depending on what the business is. But when it comes to food and manufacturing, it's all about the people. It's all about the relationships with your team and who you've been with. And it's all about your knowledge, where you said, founders not needed. They really are, from the start to the finish. I'm actually, even though I'm a control freak when I see things going wrong, I open up, and people have stayed and grown with us because I let them make those mistakes, and it was difficult at first. But that's how they grow. But when I see a 9 billion company come in and take us completely backwards to a point where they try to do a hostile takeover, and then I took the whole business back, which is another longer story, then be careful who you take on for investment and who you allow into your business trust-wise. Don't be overly paranoid, but some of the big corporates, they will come in and they're heartless. They don't
Carl
give
will hold our hand.
They don't.
Carl will hold our hand.
They don't give a crap about the people on the working floor. So luckily we took it all back and turned it around. But be careful
It's a
on
bit
that
of both,
as well.
isn't it? You've got to really be careful, but at the same time, the biggest disease I see in business is when people, founders say, but I won't want to give this task away because no one can do it as good
I know
as
you have
me.
to let go.
That's absolute rubbish, right?
Yeah.
I'm really good at what I do in that, vertical. But actually, when you talk about marketing, finance, etc., but as Heather says, it's got to be the right people.
Yeah.
And it doesn't happen overnight. And that's
Yeah.
where you really scale.
Charlie, on that theme, can we just talk a little bit about how you funded the growth of Opencast, not only with one eye on what Heather has said, but also your own experience of having private equity in your cap table in the marketing business?
So Opencast, I set it up with a founder, and just after COVID, I took a bank loan and paid him out.
And therefore, no other shareholders in the cap table other than your
And
good self?
we have 30% under option.
EMI share options.
Yeah.
Understand.
Well, you can only have EMI up to a company of 250 people. So we then have unapproved options.
Yes.
Yeah.
And in terms of how you're funding the growth of the business, is it self-financing?
It is.
And just talk to me about whether you would bring private equity into a business again that you are controlling shareholder of, given your past experience.
So we have an aspiration to grow. We have a couple of acquisitions that we are targeting, and so we are thinking about doing a process with corporate finance to get 40% shareholder in.
And do you think that will be private equity rather than a strategic trade partner?
That is our thesis, yeah. And then we've got these two acquisitions that are ready to grow, to go and finance, and then we hope that will work.
I've got a question for you. Have you had any situations where there needs to be a raise, but you don't want to work with private equity or hedge funds, but you want to work with individual entrepreneurial people, where you create, like, let's say, a pool of 10 people, and let's say you want to raise $1 million or 10 million or whatever, and one's an expert in one area, another is an expert in another area, and they all get equal percentage, but they're all entrepreneurs, so they understand all of that. Are there many businesses like that?
There are. So, we've talked about PE and we've talked about debt, but of course there are family offices which are akin to that. There's search funds now whereby there is an entity set up. There are individual investing partners who sit in the cap table to acquire assets in certain sectors, but they all bring different expertise and experience. So those are options, as well as direct lending funds. There are so many different funding options today to help businesses not only scale, but also to unlock change in ownership. It's quite complicated for entrepreneurs unless, they've been through it before or they've got good advisors, Heather, beside them. God forbid, imagine. Just moving the conversation on with one eye on our precious time this evening. Kevin, can I just ask you what you believe to be the three, bearing in mind I know there are more, but the three most important characteristics or traits for a business to have if it is to scale with capital value in mind? What are the three things that you think go to value the most as a business is growing?
Good question. And obviously, I'm an expert in scaling 30-odd businesses to, between 1 and 3 million. And then more recently, having met Carl and I'm looking at some of my groups, that's quite cool, but wouldn't it be cool to scale one of them to 100 million? So I guess the answer can be different from where you're starting from, essentially. But listen, it's people. It is absolute people. If you guys can all think of like the best person you've ever worked with in your industry, and if they were a business partner, you're just going to fly, right? And that is easier said than done, of course. Of course it is. So it's absolute people. I mean, I've got some businesses where we've built some really good trajectory. We've had good people, and then we've inserted a bad person in there. And when I say a bad person, it's not an evil person, but it's someone against your goal, and it's against your finishing line, and it's against like your morals, etc. So for me, we have now where we are we've took a step back across all the groups to then take a step forward. We had 400 staff, now we've gone down to 250 across our three groups, but we've got rid of the people that were not on the journey. And this is to Andrew's point, I got out my own way and I hired a CEO who's done this before, who's much better than me, and he was the one who pointed this out. So I mean, you wanted 3, but the first one is people. I don't know the other 2. To be honest with you.
Sounds like people might be the answer.
People, yeah.
Charlie, obviously you are the founder of Dynamo, and not only is that something close to your heart, but of course you've set up and scaled your own tech business in the region. What more do you think we, and I'm being quite inclusive when I say that, what more can we do to make sure the North East is seen as a tech hub to attract entrepreneurs here to set up tech businesses and investors alike?
I think it's fine.
So you think we're doing
the pint
enough?
is half full. It's yours from a perspective of it being maybe, we're insecure as a region that we're not doing well enough. But I think the region is doing really well, and I think we should cheerlead for the positives rather than feel like we're on the back foot. I've just done, small plug, a podcast series of my own, inspired again by you, Cole. And we had Andy Haldane, who's the chief economist of the Bank of England, who is now the chair of the Glasshouse concert hall over the road. And he, in his role at the Bank of England, goes round a lot of other regions. So we're in the Northeast bubble, but he goes and sees other places, and he talks about how a region talks about itself, and there is a narrative often in our region about former glories of digging coal, inventing steam engines, inventing the light bulb. But those are all 100 and something years ago. And I think we should talk about the amazing things that are happening here and now. Those businesses that you will see, that you as lawyers and professionals will see, that are digging trenches across the sea, that are doing renewable energy, that are doing wind farms, and the tech stuff that we're doing, and the inventions in the universities. And they are the basis of a very solid, positive region that is in better shape employment-wise than it has been for 50 plus years, with national levels of unemployment, as in we're not at the top of the league tables for bad stuff, which we've been terrible at over the last 20 or 30 years. And so,
But I still think they need more support, though. I think the Northeast has incredible advances on technology and on innovation and on everything, and I've seen loads of it. But the investment is still not there to the level that it needs to be. So I think you need to run as mayor again and get the dinosaurs out of Parliament and create,
well, I would happily
literally-
run to be mayor, because my wife has agreed if I did, she would divorce me. But I've just come back from my 25th wedding anniversary, and I plan to continue that. But I would disagree because
This is recorded, Charlie. Yeah.
I would disagree that, because I think good businesses get funding, and some of the challenges and steps that you go through are essential on the journey for building
I'm
a better
literally
resilient
at the
business.
moment funding 40 Northeast businesses that are really struggling, and they are profitable because they're in a sector, because of the media putting a downturn on the word vegan and dumping processed on it since the billion IPO we did in America. They are really struggling, and we've literally put them all online to survive because they can't get investment. So maybe it's just the vegan sector that we're in, and people have gone, oh, vegan is processed, and then they turn and have their bacon sandwich that's obviously not processed, full of antibiotic, and so I'm just talking about the whole picture, not to be a negative. The Northeast has incredible innovation, amazing young people working really hard, setting up these small businesses and unable to scale them. And one of the biggest weaknesses is the government give grants for 50 grand, 100 grand. Then you hit the ceiling. Where do you go from that? You get them out of their kitchen, they get in the garage, they get to here, and then they can't get into a full manufacturing facility. So there is a thing where there's loads of these 50, 100 grand grants that go out, and then 90% of those businesses fail because they don't look at where do they go past that ceiling. So that needs to be readdressed by the government, that they're not just chucking 100 grand at a festival for people just handing out whatever pies along the quayside, that they can't scale outside of their camper van. There is that next level of growth and that huge potential, and just that perfect example, when we got the Burger King McDonald's contract, which I brought to the Northeast, and they said, we're going to match fund you. Of course, I've never had a grant in my life. I didn't know. And I worked like a speedboat. Didn't realise the government at that time worked like ferry ships. And I built the whole of the thing in Seaton, Delaval, Peterlee, everything. That was the billion IPO. And they went, oh, well you've done it now. We're not going to match fund it to bring the staffing in because it's over 100 grand. I was like, yeah, I've just put 20 million in the Northeast. You said you'd match fund it. So there is, in reality, an area that needs to be fixed if the Northeast is going to grow to where it potentially can do. And we're at cahoots on that it's not just if it's worth investing in, you know, because there's some incredible innovation that the dinosaurs just can't see past. I was just at Vienna dealing with the hydrogen and the next eco things and all this. A lot of that came from the Northeast, but they had to get investment from Europe that is not coming from here. So there really needs to be more of that, just to shout out for those people that are really struggling still up here.
A question, it could be for any of you, please. There's a lot of talk about levelling up to try and make sure that the Northeast is seen as an entrepreneurial region from those at Downing Street. Question, do we think it's politicians who are responsible for levelling up the region, or actually is it our responsibility?
We're getting to the politics question, are we?
We are. Why not? Why not? It's getting close to the end.
Don't ask me. I was in Parliament last night telling a bunch of micro-penis idiots that basically the Guy Fawkes needs to come back and blow the whole bloody place up and start again.
So we know Heather's
I wouldn't ask
perspective.
me. They're absolutely bloody useless. The only
Not
way
talking about us, are you? No?
the only way we're going to do it is the people. It's never going to be the politicians.
Charlie, do you agree?
I think it's.
I hope Heather wasn't describing you
I
earlier,
think-
but do you agree with the sentiment?
I think there is combinations, aren't there? There's politicians, there's business, there's universities, there's education. I think we have had the benefit of some more marginal seats, and that creates a bit of competitive tension, which means that people have to play a bit harder to make an impact up here. And that may mean that we're less ignored, and that's certainly something that Andy Burnham is toying with his number 10 of the North, which I think he sort of said it was Manchester, but then he sort of backtracked that it might be somewhere else. But there is that whole regional historic challenge of the heavy industries we had when we were on a war footing, particularly here when Armstrong Works was employing 2 out of every 6 people in the city, and then you lose the war, you lose that business, and you lose coal mining, and everything is rust belt. And there hasn't been that, dividend from the south that you had when there was reunification of Germany, for instance, where the West German economy overinvested to bring East Germany up. We still suffer from that, and that is challenging, but I think despite that, most of the time we're left on our own, and it can be a good place to be, because having too much attention from politicians from Westminster is also challenging.
Here's my controversial opinion, right? So you talk about that, right? And, I agree to an extent, but what we're talking about is an island, a north and south, and if we didn't divide those islands by the politicians do in these different countries, right? Where do you draw the line? Is it England? Is it Ireland? Is it Europe? Blah, blah, blah. For me, having an opinion on politics is like having an opinion on EastEnders or the weather. You can't really affect it, right? You might be a Winston Churchill, you might go down in history, right? But the odds are, pragmatically, you look at Mourinho, he says he's the special one. Jurgen Klopp, he's the normal one. I'm the logical one. Right? I'm not putting myself on the mantle, by the way, but I'm the logical one. Logically, can we affect all that? No. What can we affect? We can affect our microeconomy. My microeconomy is my 4 sisters and my mum, and I retired them. Then I spread it out to my friends, family, and all the rest of it. That's what we can do. So for me, I put everything in to all that. I've got 100% control over that, and I can make a difference. Would I want to go to Prime Minister? Could I have a shot? Probably not, right? They'd pull up some Twitter posts from 20 years ago. Right? Why would you do that? Right? Because either way, you're going to be hated. Obviously, you want everyone to win, but it's your microeconomy. So for me, it is focus on your microeconomy, on yourself. Do what you can do for the people that you love around you, and then spread that net. You know, I see people who are like talking about politics all the time. It's like, you talk about that, but you do nothing. You do absolute nothing. What I do is I talk about the things I can affect, and I do stuff. Like Heather does, what she's doing in her businesses, she affects it. So for me, it's, you know, you can talk about stuff or you can do stuff. And that can lean on then to, you know, wider stuff. But again, so for me, it's like I've got an opinion. I was a Scouser, I was red as Labour, but now I'm older and really I should be a Tory because Labour's are screwing me up. But it's not. I want the best for everyone, but what can I do for everyone? I can't. So what I do is I focus on my microeconomy and work that way out. So politics, I'll listen to it and I won't judge because we all get into arguments. Bloody hell, you can get into a fight over politics, can't you? With people that you don't even know. I just try and be a good guy, be a kind person, affect who I can, and be tolerable. Is that the word? Yeah, that's the word, yeah. Anyway.
Andrew, my last question of the night. I'm going to start with you, but it's for each four,
Okay.
please. So if you were able to rewind the clock and give your 21-year-old self one piece of advice only, which would have had the most profound impact on your life since then, what would that be?
You can do it. It's really as simple as that. I was a headstrong young man, but you still have doubts and imposter syndrome, as you mentioned. But yeah, you can do it.
Thanks, Andrew. Heather?
There's too many. I don't have any regrets, but what I would say off the back of what you said is, yes, organise your microeconomy and everything, but dream big. You know, basically have a huge dream. When I worked in the war in the former Yugoslavia, you know, I was just a 25-year-old and we created the largest landmine clearing charity in the world. And we had huge countries against us and everything. So dream big, think big, take risks, let your family be on board to know you're going to be in a camper van on the streets one day or living in your house that you're bored to death with in a few years. But just go for your dreams because you're a banana skin away from death tomorrow. But just know and be true to yourself what makes you happy and look after your family. Because if you don't have them, you're just a lonely person on the top of a tree.
Thanks, Heather. Kevin, what bit of advice would you give your 21-year-old
I
self?
would say, don't dye your hair blonde, don't wear a hairband, you're not David Beckham.
Good advice.
Because there's receipts over there. But no, actually, what would I say? Obviously, 21, it's a pertinent question. That's when my dad went missing. What would I say? It's like, what will be, will be. You know, I wish, if I was this guy now, my father would be the easiest man to save because I know him inside out, right? I can save a lot of people and I've done it, business partners, family members. I couldn't do it because I was too young for him. But actually him going turned me into this guy. So it's kind of, look, listen, what will be, will be. And actually my dad's sacrificing himself, which is the way I've got to use that as fuel. So everything, what happens to you, you use that. Life's about either decisions or choices, right? What happens to you, you can let it happen to you or you can make those choices. So,
Good advice, and you definitely don't look like David Beckham if that was what you were wanting the audience to suggest you do look like.
Oh, no,
Charlie,
no.
last question for you. If you could give your 21-year-old self only one piece of advice that would have definitely changed the years that have passed since, what would that be, please, Charlie?
Always wear sunscreen.
Good advice. Good advice. On that note, I'm going to pause and please ask if anyone in the audience has any questions at all for any of our four panelists, please. And ask any question. Hopefully, the most ridiculous questions will give the most interesting responses. So please.
It's not a ridiculous question, sorry.
Disappointed in you.
I know. I was just curious if you see any risk in scaling slowly.
Which of our four panelists is that for, please?
Oh God, I don't know anyone.
Who would like to pick it up?
Scaling slowly.
The risk of scaling slowly.
I think it's the best thing in this environment right now while you analyse what's going on in the eco-economy. So with the Straits of Hormuz being a huge problem and it's not going away, it's a Pandora's box open which affects ammonia, fertiliser, ingredients. It depends what business are you in?
It's a not-for-profit.
A not-for-profit, yeah. Well then literally get entrepreneurial in the fact that you create something that entices people to you, that resonates with them as individuals, and yeah, go slow at the moment because it's a very unstable time. If it was another area, I might say go like that, but because you can reap huge rewards in these unstable environment. But definitely slowly right
I
now.
would say organic as well, because my first business, I scaled really organic, so I never went too far ahead of myself. It was when the revenue and profit dictated itself. Now, I've seen it when I've invested in many other founders. When they go bust, I mean, I'm making this stat up, but probably 90 to 95% of businesses that go out of business is because they run out of money. Because if you think about it, if every business never ran out of money, they'd still be there. Most businesses can sell the service they provide and supply it. So most businesses that end actually run out of money. So therefore, if you never run out of money, guess what? You're in this game, you've got a lottery ticket for the next 50 years. So what I would say is go as slow as you want, because that gives you then the next 20, 30 years to learn, to get better, and to maybe get that lottery ticket. So don't scale too fast.
Thanks,
Scale
Colin.
organically.
Good advice. Any other questions from the room, please? Rory, I can see. Oh, we're going this way. David.
Yeah, it's aimed at Charlie there. Exiting at 37. I'm actually exiting it tomorrow.
You're exiting tomorrow?
Confidential.
Tomorrow it's,
Oh, don't tell anyone. It'll be all right.
69.
Chatham House applies. I should have said earlier.
Have you exchanged yet? Or?
We exchange.
Oh, no, right, yeah, okay, shit.
We
All right,
exchange
turn the
at 12
cameras
o'clock
off.
tomorrow.
Fuck, cunt. No, you go, get rid of it. It's gone.
So one of the things you said was, how much is enough? So I'd like to answer to that. And the other thing was, you said, the depression after sale, and how did you cope with that? I'm fascinated by how you did that. And probably the period of, say, 5 years after that.
Yeah, so how much is enough? It's a question only for you and all of us internally. My mum was on the shop floor at Sainsbury's for like 20 years, and then one day the director of the store in Cowley came and asked her to be his PA, and she got paid an extra £1 an hour to go and be the PA. She had the biggest level of self-actualization I'd ever seen in anybody, because she basically was able to go and sit upstairs and send emails and make coffee, and everyone else was still doing the hard work downstairs, and she really felt like an imposter for that. How much is enough is what is your goal that you're trying to achieve and what money enables you to achieve that goal. So for me, it was not having to go to work and making choices on a daily basis, which predominantly were based around the kids. So that was my first one. I was lucky. I actually got a lot more than what my minimum number was, and that was just lucky. That's how the business grew from there. In terms of not going into depression, I'm really good at setting goals, and I'm really good at attempting to hit those goals. So I'm 3 years into retirement. So right now, I'm trying to go to every country in Europe. So I've been to 41 out of 48. I'm trying to be the biggest blood donor in the world. I'm in the top 3 at the moment, so I know that I'm pretty decent from that perspective. And I'm trying to do at least 6 school runs a week with the kids. And I'm averaging about 7 right now. So look, I have set myself goals. I know what they are. They're really basic, but actually that's it. And the other thing for me that works is legacy. So I planted my own forest, 2,000 trees, which is growing now, and I bought a piece of nature reserve that was going to be built on houses to stop it being built on. So I know I can start leaving legacy behind as well. And as a 39-year-old, it's important to me to leave legacy. And like one of my biggest goals in life is in 100 years' time, my great-great-grandkids come back to this forest that will be fully grown, and they'll be like, my great-great-grandfather was a bit crackers back in the 20s. He planted this, but look at the size of that fucking redwood that's coming out the ground now. And that's the reality. Thank you.
And good luck for tomorrow. I hope you've not jinxed it. Rory, I think you had a question.
My question was, Charlie mentioned it, but it's probably true, anybody on the panel. You mentioned trust when talking about your relationship with HMRC and how it helped you turbocharge the business. My question to the panel really is, how important is trust when growing a business? And what one thing would you recommend to build trust with customers and key partners in that business?
I think I come from a sort of 4th generation family business, and so trust has always been very, very important. And the business, Holt's Yard near here is a big business park where we rent offices out. And when COVID was hitting and everyone thought the world was going to end, I said to the team that I thought that as a 105-year-old business, we want to be around longer than COVID is going to be around. So we cut all of our rent. So no one had to pay rent for the next quarter. that was a cost to us as a business, but it was a builder of trust for our clients. And we then gradually, as everyone realised that COVID wasn't going to be the end of the world, we built that back. But I think it was, and I think Kevin also talked about a business that had been busy before COVID, but then made some bad decisions and then ended as a result of losing trust. So I think that was a lucky insight of mine to be, but also thinking long term that and it's being brought up in Newcastle, which is a very small town, where reputation, which is the flip side of trust, I suppose, is very, very important. I was always very much bred on how important the business reputation with customers was. And that plays out inside the business as well.
Yeah, to touch on that, so before COVID, coming at it from a different angle, but I was poor Scouser, and then not a poor Scouser. So for me, it was just terrified of losing it. So long before COVID, I just wanted to build the financial EQ foundations of staying alive, essentially. So we bought our offices. So we've got 7 UK offices. We invested in them in 2016, 2017. So during COVID, when a lot of our competitors went under, we were our own landlords. So we were making money, capital growth through rent, etc., etc. So again, I've come at it from a slightly different angle. But for me, as you've probably guessed from tonight, it's from an emotional standpoint, but also leveled in a financial, pragmatic IQ standpoint. And then also equally, where I say, hopefully I'm generous or a little bit generous, is we've done JVs with all the business partners. So all my business partners own these businesses equally. They all think I'm great, but I know it's golden handcuffs, so they can't go nowhere else. So again, but it's, listen, like I said before, I never want to go out of business. If I never go out of business, guess what? I can support the people around me. We can have a good business, etc. And I'm doing a good job. So it's very, very different from the way some people look. And listen, some people have got a lot more zeros after the name, like some of these guys. But for me, it's, amalgamating it and making sure I've got that level playing field. And if you give yourself that lottery ticket, guess what? You've got a few businesses that could fly.
Can I just
say,
no, you go.
sorry,
You go.
Just 2 points on that, because you just triggered something, was be careful who you trust. Because my whole life I was trusting too much. My sister's completely opposite me. So I'm mathematics, I trust everyone 100%. They drop to 75%, they're out of my life forever. And they're quite shocked by that. My sisters wait till you get to 75%, and I'm like, well, mathematically that takes a lot longer. So first of all, be careful who you trust. Secondly, with regard to how do you build trust, get off the email, get back to human contact, call the person, build a relationship so they know you're not just a robot. And that you can't always go and visit like we did in the old days. I used to have my car and shove everything in the back of the boot. We're all too busy for that now. But hold those meetings that are key. Speak to the people on the phone and keep those relationships going. And on the basis of what you just said about owning your property, and this is where a bit of good luck karma came in for me. When I started the businesses in the Northeast with the 4 factories, I owned them. And because I was dealing with America and they sue you for having a pretend hair in your soup, I kept my factories under one business, purely just in case something like that happened, I could resurrect again. And I kept my food company as another within the factory. Now that leads to trust, because when I took that investment on and they tried to completely do their hostile takeover, they couldn't, because I owned the factories. So when they came in and there's £20 million worth of machinery that's going to cost them 10 million to move out.
That's also like corporate governance,
But I
isn't
didn't
it?
do that because I was thinking I couldn't trust someone. It was just good luck.
But it's corporate governance as well. So I've got a number of property units, right? And every one of them is in an SPV, which is a special, it's a fancy name for a limited company for a property, a special purpose vehicle. Now, with my 70 units, I own them across probably 50 SPVs, because if one of them goes belly up, like Heather just said there, or someone's got something against you, it can bring the whole thing down.
Yeah.
So again, it's pragmatism. So trust people, but also pragmatism.
But I didn't do it. I didn't do it knowledgeably. I just thought I might get sued by some crazy American.
With one eye on time, are there any other questions, please? I think we've got a few, so I'll let Emma kindly present the microphone.
Thank you. It's been a great talk. Thanks very much for all the insights. I'm going to ask a hard question. which is if you could think of a mistake you made during your business with the gift of hindsight to go back and fix, what would it be?
Kevin, can we start with you? And get your quick answers from each of you, please.
That's a really good question. Mistake.
I don't mind going first.
Go on, yeah, you go first.
So we once trusted a new client. They racked up 400k of debt with us and then went pop. And we lost 400k of bad debt in one afternoon.
So what's the lesson there, Andrew?
We put much stricter rules in place around credit checks with new clients thereafter.
Awesome, thank you. Kevin?
Okay, right, put yourself first. So I'm always putting everyone first at the detriment of myself, but you've got to protect yourself. Now, I'm the most hopefully unselfish person that I feel I am, but actually you're being selfish by being unselfish, because my baby daughters, my sisters, my mum, they need me there. So actually you've got to put yourself first, not in a way where you're ripping people off, but you can't let people take the pee out of you. So you've also got to protect yourself. So be nice, be kind and stuff, but you've got to protect yourself, because for me, if I fall down, the whole house falls down, the old empire falls down. So that's what I would
Thanks,
say.
Kevin. Heather?
I think do your homework on what you think is a new idea or something that 100 other people aren't doing, and that's one of the biggest weaknesses is everybody goes, oh, and they don't do their research or they don't partner up with other people. I put loads of, I think, 150 charities together that were starting their own charities. I said, well, they're doing it down the road, so why don't you go like that? So I'd say research, and then be careful who you partner with, whether it's a family member, whether it's an investor or whatever, and look at yourself and your own faults. And where your weaknesses are, like you said before, get the right people around you. They're all sort of key things, because when we're young, you know, I had to learn absolutely everything, but I'm not the best at absolutely everything. So I now have learned the hard way to focus on what I'm good at, and the same, have great people around me and appreciate them, and not put that round peg in a square hole thinking they're going to be brilliant over there. So yeah, just look at the whole thing and really do your research and your due diligence, and whatever your passion is in the business that you're in, go and do it and work for 10 years in a business that's similar, if it's not completely innovative. And then you can learn on their dollar or pound.
And enjoy being wrong, because if you own a business and you're right, you're right. If you're wrong, you're right. Because if someone proves you're wrong, I love being proved wrong, because if I admit I'm wrong, it's like, great, the business wins. I've worked with people, past and unfortunately present, where they would rather win an argument and the business be wrong and we lose money. And it's like, I would love to be wrong and we both win together. So lose the ego and be proved wrong.
Charlie?
I had an experience similar to you where I had a bad debt of £3 million. So
Oh, wow.
I raise you.
Wow. You can win that one. That's fine by me. You win.
That's one argument not
Yeah.
to.
But I had a lot of help from Imogen.
Ah.
So Ward Hadaway were very, very helpful. And so I think your question was, it worst mistake or worst of times? There were some pretty hard times as we... I had to run the administration of putting the business that had also had a bad debt into administration to stop them running up more bad debts with other people, and that was an incredibly stressful time. But I would credit Imogen and the team at Ward Hadaway for guiding me through that, something that I hadn't done before.
And also don't underestimate how you can get pro forma in a business. If you have a unique product and the people really want it, they have to build up their credit worthiness. So I'd say 90% of our new customers are pro forma for at least 2 years.
Thanks all. Thanks for the question. Any final questions from anyone in the room? I think there's just two gentlemen behind you with their hands raised.
I've just moved up from the northeast, and it's just fantastic to drive straight into Newcastle without the messing about in London. But at the same time, you know, and I love the northeast. It's a much smaller place. It's much friendlier. It's much more human. But how much of a disadvantage do you think it is being up here versus all the bullshit down south with the venture capitalists and stuff that I know pretty well?
Charlie, can I put that to you first? Because I guess you have experience of being in London, and of course you now run businesses here in the sunny northeast.
What was the question in all of that? Are we
What's
at
the
a
disadvantage of
from
being
being in the northeast and running a business east?
There are no disadvantages. I mean, I think the ecosystem is maybe more challenging, more, you know, yes, there's big talk in London, but there's also that it raises the game for everybody. And I think house prices drive people in London to need to keep going and keep pushing, because the affordability of a house and then adding another bedroom would cost you another 600 grand or whatever it is, or 200. I'm not familiar with the particular aspects of that, but I always felt that everyone in London was pushing harder, and there is an energy to that. But
It's an advantage, I think. It's an advantage, right? The Scousers and the Geordies are the same. We've all got some similar banter, haven't we? Right? You can have a good night out with us. It's an advantage from that side. Also, you know, you want to have a chip on your shoulder. For me, I'm this Scouser who's done better than he should have, and use that. So, and again, it's like different levels of business that you come from. But I use that as my motivation. It's like, who's this guy? Why is he here? Why is he in these rooms owning a law firm, etc.? So use it, and that got me enthused. That got me motivated, and also, we're pretty funny, aren't we? And we've got good crack. Listen, 2 nights out, Liverpool and Newcastle, we've got some good crack. So let's use that. Let's use that. We're as smart as anyone else. So
thank you, Kevin.
I'll shut up.
Can I just say it depends what business you're in. So you have to really think of that. So if you're in manufacturing, the Golden Triangle, where we've got one of our other factories, is in Northamptonshire. And this is a perfect example. In Gateshead, there was a company that created this huge industrial park, and they hadn't thought this through, that it was about delivering to certain consumers. So there was the Hoover, right? And the company just took the entire fulfillment away from Gateshead because they decided that people wanted to have their Hoover by 8 p.m. the same day. I mean, it's completely ridiculous, but the whole industrial estate nearly collapsed. So it totally depends what business you're in. If you're in distribution and manufacturing, there's some challenges, and it's why a lot of people sort of move to the Golden Triangle area. But outside of that, there are no disadvantages. But there is in that sector, so it depends what business you're in.
Thanks, Heather. Any final questions? I think we've got one last question, then we'll have to...
Hi, yeah, it's one final question for Heather. You mentioned selling 25% of your business, but then the company came in and pretty much took over and destroyed it sounds like. Only selling 25%, how did they have that much power, and how did that make you feel seeing them destroying what you'd built?
Well, it's all the devil's in the detail. So basically, having always owned my own businesses and scaled them organically, which is how that happened. 30 years we took to get people to actually not just throw up at the word vegan. And when the billion IPO happened, because you had Quorn that sold to Exponent in London for 360 million, they put 7 million in, and then they sold for 550 million to Monda Nissan in the Philippines. Then the city went, oh, maybe this veggie, vegan thing's interested. So we knew that was going up then. And then you had Daiya Cheese that we helped in America, which was basically sold for 350 million to the Japanese. That was the second thing. So we started getting all this attention when people realized we were the innovators of 350 products. We've been in Holland & Barrett for 27 years. And people were making offers all the time. And they were very tempting. You know, you sort of 45, 50, 60 million, buy you out, blah, blah, blah. So I said, I will just keep looking. And also I wanted to be partnering with a family business. So this particular company in Germany were family businesses, which you think would be easier, but it was actually 70 layers of a family business, so it was a nightmare. And what I didn't know is, and this is because I'd only been a director with no other board members, so I could sign off just what the facts were. I didn't know that when you take on investors and then you have the voting rights, I didn't know that if there's one bill that comes into your company that you don't have the cash flow for immediately, that the people on the board can vote to take the company into administration. And what I didn't know is these investors had done a deal with my managing director and the finance people to say, okay, well, we're going to do a hostile takeover. She's not going to know about it because I'd created this new innovation and we're going to move it to Germany. So you can take that part of the company there and you can have that part over there. So I didn't know any of this was going on. I was with Whole Foods in America. And they said, we've got this bill for £960,000. It was an old gas pipe bill from the Peterlee days that I argued with the energy company with every year, saying it's not our bloody bill, for God's sake, but they kept putting it in our name. We had no invoice finance, no asset finance, no debt. All the investment was in shares. I had a 6 million loan into the company that had sat there to keep scaling for years, and I wasn't recalling that loan. But on this one bill that we didn't own, they could do a vote and come together, and they were like 3 people on my side, that, and this is the thing about trust that you'd known for years and brought in, and they did this deal behind my back. What they underestimated was that when they put it into administration, and this is where something good comes out of something bad. I invested in so many different businesses in the Northeast. 20% of them have succeeded because the 80% just don't listen because they're all youngsters. And but they went into administration. So I lost all my money, but I learned about administration. And I went, the thing about administration is, when you're a big company who's trying to do a hostile takeover, you still have to go through your due diligence. But for the administrators, they want the best offer on the table immediately to turn it around as quickly as possible. So I just forwent my 6 million, threw in another 1 million on top, and just took the whole thing back, on top of the fact that I owned the factories separately. So suddenly, they just lost everything from trying to actually screw me over. So that's how I turned it around.
Great result.
It was a great result, but it was sad for me because I thought we can grow this together. I had this huge innovation. Thank God I didn't give them access to the company that I've just done now, which has gone viral and completely insane for gut health. But yeah, it was meant to happen for a reason, to come back in the right hands.
Thanks, Heather. Thank you for that great last question. If anyone does have any final questions, feel free to ask any of our entrepreneurs those questions over drinks at the end. We're going to be hanging around. Each of our entrepreneurs have said you can get in touch on social media or indeed by telephone. For now, can I just invite you all to show your appreciation to our 4 panelists, please. One final thing before we do wrap up. If anyone would like to actually download the podcast with each of these incredible entrepreneurs, then you can do from wherever you download your podcasts. I had the pleasure of spending 90 minutes with each of the entrepreneurs over the last year. So please do, if you are someone who likes to watch or listen to podcasts. But for now, you have been listening to Confessions of an Entrepreneur Live, and we are delighted that you could join us. Massive thanks.
It has been an absolute pleasure to be able to spend quality time with 4 panelists this evening who give us an insight into their highs, their lows, and their entrepreneurial journey. But of course, it would be brilliant, wouldn't it, to be able to spend some time understanding what some of the entrepreneurs in the room have been able to take away from this evening's panel event. And for sure, I think the clips that follow will be inspiring.
I loved it. It was really, really, really interesting. 4 very different entrepreneurs, very different routes. I thought, compared to a lot of events like this I come to, the origin stories were incredibly passionate, incredibly sad in a lot of instances, and clearly, even at the end of very successful careers, still driving those individuals. I think as a bunch of 4 entrepreneurs, incredibly driven and single-minded, and that came through again and again and again. But lovely to also hear a little bit of humility of people talking about imposter syndrome and acknowledging that they don't always have all of the answers. And I think what came through loud and clear was all of them at one point or other referenced the advice that they had from the professional service advisors around them who've helped steer their journeys over the bad times, but to the good times as well, and help them realise their goals.
When I set my business up, there wasn't networking quite like this, and now there is. I think it's hugely influential, and if you get the right people, which I think we had this afternoon and this evening, it's quite important.
It's a roller coaster. There's ups and downs, but you have to go for it. You have to give it your all, and if you look for people to help you, people will help you. People who have done this want to give back and reinvest to what they've learned, the journey that they've been on, and the energy they've put in, and give back to new entrepreneurs. And I think that's fantastic, and that's been really clear today.
One of our values here at Ward Headaway is ambition, and we're doing a big campaign around backing ambition. And I think you can see the ambition in those entrepreneurs and where they came from and what their starting points were and their journeys and moving forward. And I think really just that, how they sort of value that ambition as against some of what the risks might be. And I think for me, taken out of that was real what they did to plan, how they looked at what their plan B might be, but whilst also continuing to take those risks and scale those businesses. So I think there's a real positive stories from them all as to how we got to where we are and how they did.
It has been truly inspiring to be able to learn a little bit more about how entrepreneurs go about deciding what business to set up, how you scale a business successfully, and indeed some of the things that perhaps along the way will stop any entrepreneur from achieving success, accepting these are just obstacles and can be overcome with knowledge, focus, resilience, and without doubt support from other like-minded entrepreneurs. You have been watching Confessions of an Entrepreneur live. If you would like to watch the full Confessions of an Entrepreneur live panel event, then you can do from wherever you download your podcasts from. I would also encourage you to watch our podcast series, which is Confessions of an Entrepreneur. You can download any of our podcasts from wherever you consume your podcasts from. But for now, my name is Carl Swansbury. It has been a pleasure to co-host our 2026 Confessions of an Entrepreneur live event with Horde Hadaway, and we look forward to welcoming you, our viewers, to future Confessions events.